Hey, everybody, and welcome in to Gamecock Central. This is the recruiting rundown. He is Wes Mitchell. I am Kendall Smith, and we're so glad that you're joining us here. Wes and I were just talking about the Jonas Brothers concert. Wes is a huge Joe Bros fan. And who is your favorite, Wes, before we get started? Because him and I were both at the concerts last week. I was in Charlotte, and obviously he was at the concert.
Let me just say, took my wife for her birthday. That was when I was there. But my first Joe Bros experience ever. I did like the song 3000. That was very catchy. And I'll be Team Joe.
I am Team Joe, 100%. Have been Team Joe since
For
I was
different reasons for me and for Kendall.
since
So,
I was
Kendall,
6
what do you have planned for us here today on this recruiting rundown?
Team Joe. And Wes is like, stop talking about the Jonas Brothers. Let's talk about recruiting. Okay, we're sitting here. It's November 11th, and we are getting closer and closer to National Signing Day, which is coming up on December 3rd. So we figured we'd do a little check-in to see how South Carolina is doing just about 3 weeks away from the big day. So, Wes, where do things stand right now for South Carolina as we inch closer and closer to National Signing Day, the early National Signing Day on December 3rd?
Yeah, I think for the most part, Kendall, the way recruiting is structured these days, and, frankly, with the year South Carolina's having, a big part of it is you're trying to hold on to everybody that is committed to South Carolina already. You're trying to get to the finish line with a lot of these guys. And interestingly enough, I think South Carolina's done a fantastic job of keeping this class intact. They have lost a guy or two along the way, but for the most part, this class has stayed together. They all kind of see the bigger vision that Shane Beamer and the staff have. And, I think so far things look good there. They got a public additional declaration from Landon Duckworth last week, which I think, obviously is big. That's somebody you and I have talked about here on this show countless times. Anytime, you have to get rid of your offensive coordinator, who also is your quarterback's coach and is someone who, even you go back to when Duckworth committed the second time, he credited that relationship with Mike Shula, the comfort level with Mike Shula, as being part of the reason he chose the Gamecocks. But obviously, if you recruit well, if you kind of put forth every aspect of your school to a player and make sure they're comfortable with your school, it doesn't a lot of times always come down to just one coach. And in the case of Duckworth, he solidified his commitment to South Carolina, plans on signing with the Gamecocks. And, Kendall, frankly, the kid probably just got a very early lesson in how much of a business college football is. We talked, I guess it was a couple months ago, about how LSU was one of the outside schools pushing South Carolina or pushing Duckworth to try to get him to flip from South Carolina. Lo and behold, not only are they dealing with an OC change, they're dealing with a head coaching change. So I do think even though there is that OC change at South Carolina, we'll see who they hire. You still at least know that you have your head coach is going to be there in Shane Beamer, and he still believes in the trajectory of this program.
Absolutely. And we know that South Carolina does a great job with developing these relationships with players. And we've seen in years past that there are always a couple of players that maybe wait until a little bit closer until the actual signing day, or South Carolina maybe waits on a little bit. Are there any of those situations this year, Wes, where it's like South Carolina's waiting on answers from a couple of these guys, or maybe they'll offer a couple of these guys at the last minute? Where are we with that right now?
Yeah, I think right now, and this is certainly not a comprehensive list, but maybe two of the guys I'm paying closest attention to play the same position, the edge spot, and they're both flip candidates for South Carolina. Kendall, 5-star target Zion Ely, and then 4-star edge Julian Walker. Both committed to other programs. Ely committed to Maryland, Walker committed to Michigan, and both have been on campus. Both have been on campus fairly recently and took official visits during the season to South Carolina. And you have a situation there at Maryland where they're having a down year as well. There's a lot of pressure on Mike Locksley to win at this point. And, we'll see what direction Maryland and that administration takes things. But South Carolina, it's been a very just kind of public recruitment at this point. You have Locksley making comments, sort of inferring that South Carolina broke rules while mentioning Zion by name. So I do think the Gamecocks are still firmly in that recruitment. He's made hints on social media that he's still kind of open to other schools, even though he is still just, I guess, literally at this point committed to Maryland in terms of commit lists. So I think he's a guy to keep an eye on. Julian Walker as well. He, for most of the year, has been planning to visit Michigan for their big game against Ohio State. From what I understand, that's probably still the case there. So we'll see how that visit goes. But Kendall, this kid, we all know about the connections there. We all know he's right down the road as well. He has been at South Carolina games countless times this year, took an official visit, like I said earlier. Those are the two guys that I would say I'm paying most attention to down the stretch going into signing day. And I don't know if we're going to know until we really get there. Like, those are going to be true, I would say, down to the finish line recruitments, as all the schools involved kind of just make their final pitches, their final pushes for both of those players.
A lot of these players are down to the finish line recruitments because, as we know, South Carolina isn't just trying to flip players, but they're trying to avoid having their current committed players flipping, and you definitely don't want that. So these last couple of weeks are super important in terms of just continuing to cultivate those relationships and make sure that South Carolina stays on track. So what do these next few weeks look like with the season still in full swing for South Carolina, and also still trying to make sure that the coaches are staying up to date and keeping up with these guys to make sure that, yes, pen goes to paper come December 3rd?
Yeah, this past week, like Thursday, Friday, with it being the bye week, that was a big kind of, I would say, visit day for the coaches, getting to some high schools. Now, there are some limitations to how many of those trips you can take in a given year, which is why, if you maybe saw reports, this coach was a certain place. Shane Beamer was actually right down the road at Carver's Bay seeing Zion Giles, who is South Carolina's 4-star offensive line commit. So he was there. Sean Elliott was expected to be there as well. When you see, well, hey, what about the rest of the staff? If you've already used up your number of visits, you can't just keep stacking them. So South Carolina essentially is exhausting all of their potential visits that they can as this process winds down. So that was a big part of that. You're going to be on the phone a lot, just checking in, making sure everything is fine. Let's be honest, in the rev share NIL era, you're going to be making sure that like rev share promises and stuff like that are where they need to be. And, you've got 2 home games left. And you've got, of course, that game with Coastal, which is going to be an afternoon game. And then a game that a lot of your in-state kids will want to see, South Carolina Clemson, every year. I think you want to keep getting these committed guys on campus, remind them why they chose South Carolina in the first place. And a big part of this is they're just around their future teammates too. Like, these are people they've built relationships with, maybe even in some cases have built bonds even more so than they have with the coaches. So I think anytime you can get your committed guys on campus leading up to signing day, obviously is a positive thing for South Carolina.
Great info as always, Wes. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us here on the Recruiting Rundown. Lots more to come your way over these next few weeks. There will be a lot going on, as Wes mentioned, with these last couple of home games that South Carolina has in its 2025 season. So we'll let you know who's coming to those, who to keep your eye on. And then, of course, as we get closer to National Signing Day, we call it that on December 3rd because that's when most guys sign at this point. We'll also have all of the latest on that over on GamecockCentral.com. So check us out over there, follow us on social media, and have a great rest of your week, everybody. For Wes Mitchell, I am Kendall Smith. This has been the Recruiting Rundown here on Gamecock Central, and we will see you soon. Bye.